Tonight, we are diving into a world that most people don't want to believe exists, a world of deception, danger, and unimaginable horror. But one man has not only stepped into the darkness, he's fought to bring light to those trapped in it. This is an episode you can't afford to miss. Paul Hutchinson has been on the front lines of human trafficking rescues, risking everything to save lives. Tonight, he's pulling back the curtain on what really happens behind the scenes, the myths that keep victims hidden, and how we can all be part of the fight. Paul, I want to thank you so much for being here.
Tiffany, I'm excited to share with you and your audience.
Yes, I can only imagine like going undercover. You said you had 70 missions?
Yeah, over 17 times that I went undercover and identified child traffickers and participated in the rescues of the children.
Only imagine what kind of event it was.
It is. I mean, the very first time I thought this can't exist. Why is this even a thing? Anywhere, anywhere, anywhere. And I remember the first time where I was sitting down in a chair like I am right now, and the traffickers had brought out some of their inventory, their models. And then one of them was an 11-year-old boy that they had brought in from Haiti. Was so scared they gave him cocaine. I mean, what kind of fucked up monster thinks that that's attractive, right? And this little girl, if you guys have seen the movie Sound of Freedom, the one that they named Rocio in the movie, they called her Princess in real life, these traffickers, and they brought her out. She was also 11, being sold as a virgin the very first time. And standing in front of me, I'm sitting down, she's standing up, and we're almost eye level. And all I could see was fear. And I thought, this can't be happening. Why is anybody in the world attracted to something like this? I mean, she was so scared. There was tear stains on her makeup face. And I took her little hands, and the traffickers were still there. I couldn't blow our cover. What I wanted to do is say, you're going to be fine. You're going to see your parents again. And then I couldn't say that. And I held her hands, and I just said, that's the beginning. It's okay. And I told the traffickers, it's not time for the party to start. We need to keep negotiating this business plan. I sent her back inside, and the most beautiful moment of my life up to that time was after the agents came and stormed the party and arrested everybody, and the child protective, me included, the bad guys think that we got extradited to the U.S. to stand trial, and the child protective services people came in with the kids, and they started laughing, and they started singing with the children just to calm them down. And that sound of freedom was the most beautiful sound that I ever heard. I started crying, and they weren't supposed to tell the kids that we were the good guys, but somebody must have said something, because as we were being led off the island, this little girl, the one that had been standing in front of me less than half an hour before with tear stains in her face, she was standing there by the window, by the door, the window part of the door, and her hand was on the door. She was crying again, but she was smiling and waving, and she said in her broken English, she said, "Thank you, Americans." And I just started crying. I just turned the agent with me. I said, holy shit, I spent my whole life making money, making rich people richer. I want to make a difference. I want to be a part of this. What can I do? And that was the beginning of 10 years of leading undercover missions in 15 countries. And from there, we decided to create global awareness. And I knew we couldn't take millions of people to see what I had seen, but we could help millions of people feel what I had felt. And indeed, that's what happened. Sound of Freedom became the #1 independent film in history. And 70 million people have seen the film, and hundreds of millions of children are safer today because of it.
I thought it was such an eye opener, and that story just gave me goosebumps. And I can only imagine just the roller coaster of emotions when you're thinking, thank God I'm the one standing in front of this little girl, and it's not some schmuck who's ready to
To
do
harm
the
them.
unthinkable. And I mean, that movie, it brought in $100 million in the box office in the first 2 weeks. I think that shows people are interested. They want to see the truth, which was kind of amazing to me because usually you think people don't want to know the truth.
Well, and I think that the fact that we got completely blacklisted by Hollywood and big media, that the movie was done 5 years before we were able to bring it public. And we were just blocked everywhere, on every avenue, everywhere. So many different places that bring us all kinds of crap. Netflix says, they turned down Sound of Freedom. This is way back in the beginning when we were just trying to find somebody to distribute it. Yet they'll put out something like Cuties, right? A bunch of 10-year-olds dressed as strippers. Are you kidding me? We have to pay attention to what's being force fed to our families, what kind of information is coming into our homes. In fact, Angel Studios, the studio that finally took the movie to the world, they got sued. Their predecessor company got sued by Hollywood years ago. The reason they got sued is because they had created a piece of hardware, like a little DVD player, and software with it that allowed you as a family to dictate what came into your home. You could take a rated R movie and say, you know what, I want to watch this with my kids, but I want to get rid of the vulgarity and the nudity and the killing, right? So you could actually turn it down from 1 to 10, all the way down to no nudity or a little bit or just no vulgarity, whatever. You could control what was coming in. And Hollywood sued them because of them giving you and I the ability to control what came into our own homes. That should tell you everything about their agenda right there.
Oh God, Hollywood is one of the most corrupt places there is.
Absolutely. Yeah, you see that. I think this P. Diddy thing is the tip of the iceberg as to how many of them are involved in these hideous acts. And they didn't want us to be on this podcast. They didn't want conversations around the dinner table about these very things. They didn't want that to happen. That's why they were blocking our ability to bring that truth to the world.
Well, this is the stuff that we need to see because I've always heard about it in other countries. Once you find out it's actually happening at home, holy shit, like mind blown. I could not believe. Like you're like, oh yeah, it's happening over there in where the hell was
Colombia or Thailand or
Thailand, yeah.
yeah,
What was I
exactly.
thinking of? And you're like, oh my God, because they're so poor. You come up with excuses. I mean, it's not right by any means, but it
The,
doesn't
the
happen.
United
Just
the United States is the number one producer and consumer of child pornography in the world. And they're the predators. Many men go to second and third world countries to engage in these horrific things from the US. And sadly, I don't want to get political because the wall should have never been a political thing. This is a human trafficking thing. Hundreds of thousands of children were brought across the border unaccompanied, and minors that didn't have the right tracking in terms of where they were being put. And I'm telling you, I spent so much time in Latin America every single day in major cities throughout Latin America. Children are taken from healthy families. And I didn't say wealthy families, they're healthy families, a mom and a dad and love in the home, but no money to follow up on figuring out where that kid went. And immediately, just like what you saw in the movie, that child is told, you don't want something bad to happen to your sister, do you? You're going to do exactly what we say. They're drugged, they're raped, and within 2 weeks, they're completely compliant to the point where you could take them to the border and have them have a phone number and an address of their new sponsor that wasn't being followed up with. And they very easily, many of them were put into new trafficking organizations here in the United States. And so, yes, it's happening underneath our noses. And we can talk about this with the parents as well, of what you can do to keep your own kids safe, because this is a bigger problem than people realize. The number of children, well, people will leave Sound of Freedom. They'll say, okay, I want to do something. I want to go help rescue kids. Well, the worst thing you can do is go to Mexico and go try to rescue children. You're going to get shot, right? You're probably going to get arrested. The best thing you can do is go home and hug your children. And people are like, oh, how is that going to help? Just hugging my kids. Well, it's important to understand that the majority of children that get taken, that get trafficked, doesn't happen like what you see in the movie where a healthy home, they get taken and put into a container ship and taken to another country. Usually is what happens, especially in places like the US. Those children are taken from broken homes, runaways, a broken foster care program. So if you can do everything you can to keep your kids in a healthy family with love in that family so they don't end up in a foster care program, they don't end up runaways, that's a big deal. And the other thing that is even a bigger deal, and this is going to surprise a lot of parents. Yes, there's 12 plus million children who are being trafficked. They're taken, that are being moved, sold for sex, etc. However, 1 out of every 4 women that you know, 1 out of every 4 have been a victim of sexual abuse as a child. As a child. Many of them never talk about it. With men, it's a little bit less. It's 1 in 5 at some time in our life. Yet most of them, it happened when they were kids. In fact, 1/4 of them, it happened under the age of 10 years old in their own homes. And so if you walk out on your front porch and you look left and you look right, and there's at least 4 or 5 homes on your street or in your apartment complex, there's a very high chance that one of those doors is a very dangerous place for children. And so you need a relationship. It's so important that we all have relationships with our children where they can very comfortably come to you and say, hey, mom, hey, dad, I don't like it when you tell me to hug Uncle Harry because he touches me weird and he tells us that we should have secrets outside of you. Or I don't like going to this friend's house because her brother took pictures of us while we're changing and now he's saying he's going to use them against us at school if we don't do other things. Or I don't like this babysitter. She's showing us pornography and says that we should have secrets with her or trust her more than you. These are grooming behaviors. And many of the children that we rescued slept in their own beds at night. And their aunt was trafficking them because she was showing them pornography, working with the traffickers and selling these children. Or somebody was being controlled through fear because somebody had pictures of them and say, okay, now you're going to do these other things or we're going to do more. One of the most important things that parents can do right now is pay close attention to what's happening online and have a relationship with your kids where if something happens there, and this is huge, guys, I guarantee there are many people who are listening to us right now where this is going on with your kids. You've got a 13-year-old, she's online, she's texting back and forth with another 13-year-old or even your little boy, a 13-year-old, right? 14-year-old. And they are talking to what they believe is another 13 or 14-year-old kid. It's not, it's a predator. And this predator says, hey, here's some pictures of me. And it's my cute one, sends a half nude of a young girl. And then this boy sends a half nude back or whatever else. And now your child has just sent some sensitive information, some pictures of themselves to a predator. Now it gets worse. They use it and say, okay, I need more. And as soon as the child is like, no, I don't want to send anything else. Now they say, okay, now you will do more, or we will send this all over your school. We will do this. And that child either commits suicide or they send them money, or they end up saying, yeah, I'll meet you at a park and do this, whatever. It happens all the time. It happens all the time. Sextortion is a big, big problem. Probably one of the biggest problems that children face online today. And it's all part of child trafficking. It absolutely is. Anytime a child is being controlled through fear, even if they're sleeping in their own beds at night, by a predator, it is a form of child trafficking. And so that's what parents can do to really focus on keeping their own children safe so that we don't end up having to do these freaking rescue missions to go find these kids in third world countries.
Yeah, you gotta keep the line of communication open. Let them know that they can come and talk to you about anything. Sometimes it might not be pleasant stuff, but you'd rather them come talk to you than go find it in a stranger who may not be who they said they are. And it's just so scary that the world gotten here. And it's like you don't see any end in sight.
Well, I'm going to touch on that because here's the thing. When I sat there in front of that little girl 10 years ago and I made a commitment to myself, to God, to that child, that I was going to dedicate my life to eradicating that evil from the face of the earth. Well, 10 years later, 70 plus missions undercover, The movie still hadn't come out because Hollywood and everything else was blocking it. And I looked at the numbers and I realized there was more children being sold then than there was 10 years before. And I looked in the mirror and I said, Paul, if your goal is to eradicate this evil, you're not doing a very good job. Because every time we were pulling 20 kids out of hell, because not enough was being done to fix the demand, another 20 kids were being sucked back into the deepest recesses of hell to fulfill that. And so I thought, okay, what needs to happen to fix the demand side? Why are people even attracted to something like that? Where is that coming from? And I realized, and don't get me wrong here, guys, okay? My next words, I am not a sympathizer of anybody who hurts a child. Once they've crossed that line, they're wasting my oxygen, right? They need to be behind bars or underground. However, 70% of incarcerated felons admit to abuse as a child. Hurt people hurt other people. I realized every mission, I wish that I could go back in time before these children were ever abused in the first place and get them out before they ever had that trauma. But then I thought, okay, what would I do then? Just pull them out? No, I would sit down with that. What ideally, I would go back before that trafficker, before that perpetrator ever crossed that line and have a conversation with them at that point and say, what is going on in your life that makes you think that in any way it's okay to take that road? Most of them had abuse as children. Now, that doesn't justify their behavior. Most people abused as children grow up to be protectors. God bless us. God bless them who say, you know what? No, I'm not going to ever allow a child to be hurt in my life on my watch because of what happened, right? Most of my operators, undercover operators, were guys who had that kind of abuse as children. They're literally putting their lives on the line every time to ensure that children don't have to go through that. So, however, the majority of us, the majority of people who have been through that become protectors. However, 1 out of every 3, if not given the love, the help, the healing that they need, 1 out of every 3 become contact offenders. Now, how do we fix that? There's a lot of ways. Number 1 is talking about it. The average age of somebody even talking about their abuse as a child, the average age is 52 years old. That's my age. I've got kids, I've got grandkids, right? I've built my career. If you're holding on to that trauma that entire time, it's coming out in anger issues, it's coming out in addictions, it's coming out in anxiety and depression and all of these unhealthy things that are passing on trauma in some way. And again, 1 out of every 3 pass it on. However, just the act of talking about it takes it from 1 in 3. Some studies I've seen, it's like 1 in 50 to 1 in 100 chance, less than 1% chance of passing on that trauma, just talking about it. And many guys are like, oh, you know, that thing that happened to me when I was 8 by my uncle, I don't want to talk about that. That'll make me less of a man. No, it won't. You were 8. That was a horrible thing that happened by somebody who was holding on to a lot of pain. And now you are holding that pain your entire life. And by just releasing it, just talking about it with your spouse or doing some other things that we can talk about later, you can completely release that energy from your life so that it doesn't come out in trauma transfer. It doesn't come out in verbal abuse or physical abuse or anger issues or addictions, or in some cases, the abuse of a child. And so that's really what has to happen. We're never going to fix this problem doing 1,000 undercover missions rescuing kids. We're going to fix it by elevating global consciousness, helping people heal before they ever pass that trauma on.
Absolutely. I have been saying that for at least a year and a half now. That unfortunately, a lot of the perpetrators were victims themselves. And either some still got kind of rewired and they're like, this is what I'm used to. It's fine. And then other people are like, hell no, I'm not going to do this. So you got to figure it out. Like, you have to realize what it did to you as a child and remember that. And take that no accountability. When you do this to a child, they are never the same, ever the same. Like, is that something that you really wanna live with for the rest of your life, that you have changed this individual for the rest of their life? Well, you were undercover, did you ever ask any of the buyers why they
We were posing as buyers. The majority of the people that we worked with were the traffickers that were selling it. However, they usually got life in prison. We could let them plea down to 25 years if they gave us the names and information of the people, the US guys that were down there doing these horrific things, and we could turn that information into the authorities, etc. But yes, the majority of them went through that as children themselves. In fact, even shockingly, there was a higher percentage than you would think of the traffickers that were women. And they many times were trafficked themselves as kids. And that's the only thing that they knew was selling their body for sex. And that was a way they could start making money. And many of them went into that later. Almost almost all of the women who were involved in child trafficking were trafficked themselves as children. And you would think, didn't you wake up? How traumatic was that? Well, they're completely numb emotionally in every way by that time. And yes, some of the kids, they end up getting turned over to an organ harvesting place. I mean, there's some horrific things, but the ones that do make it to adulthood, a lot of times that's all they know. We run the Child Liberation Foundation now, and a lot of our programs for the safe houses with the kids is so important that we teach them skills, that we teach them confidence, that we help break that cycle because so many of them will go right back into prostitution as an adult if we don't help them truly heal from that and get some skill sets to pull them out of that place.
just such a sad, sad story, and it's a cycle. You get sexually molested from your dad, all of a sudden, that doesn't mean anything to you anymore, and you don't care about who you're giving it to or for what, and it's just I couldn't imagine. I could not imagine being stuck in that, and I think it's so important what you guys are doing, trying to fix that, because that's where it's gonna start. You gotta nip either before it happens or right after it happens so we can start working on the feelings. Prevention and then healing.
You know, it's interesting how you say that, right? Hour after it happens. So the kids that we rescued in the trafficking rings, because of the fact that we knew that was going on, they immediately got the help. And children are in this beautiful state of being able to recover much more quickly than adults who have buried stuff forever, right? And so a year and 2 or 3 years later, given the right help and the love that they need, they're able to recover. Now, what happens with a girl who was even a boy who was abused by a family member, especially a father or a dad or a bishop or some authority figure in their life, grandfather, etc. When this is a person you're supposed to trust, and all of a sudden, boom, something horrible happened, and don't tell anybody or else, and you're controlled through fear, and you bury that. Now, what happens? That's like an infection that gets covered up and continues to rot your entire life. And then 20 and 30 years later, it takes a lot to help heal that trauma because it's literally been festering for 20 plus years. It's been buried. And it's actually more difficult to help somebody 20 and 30 years later than a child if you find out, hey, that happened recently. Let's get you the help, the love, the healing that you need now.
Well, yeah, it causes autoimmune diseases.
Hmm.
I had a lady, she said it caused deafness in her ear because of some kind of infection. So many different things happen to you because your body doesn't know what to do with all of it. It's the
So true.
cortisone. It's like on crack.
So years ago, Tiffany, I had my first successful company in my early 20s was one that helped people overcome anxiety, depression, PTSD, addictions, childhood trauma. We had a cognitive restructuring program, that workbook, an audio program and videos, et cetera. I realized that in doing that work over that 10 years, the majority, I believe 90% of the things that we go to the doctor for physically have emotional basis to them. And I'm talking everything, including cancer, right? Now, I was studying to be a doctor. So, the medical personnel, no, this study here and this is in your genes. What? No, there is so many things. Your mind is infinitely more powerful than you give it credit. And people are like, oh, I've got depression. I went to the doctor and they did a blood test and my balances are all out. And that's why I have to be on this medication my whole life. It's just how my body works. No, your brain releases chemicals based on your dominant thought patterns. If I got a bunch of teenage boys here in the room, right, and we bring out a bunch of beautiful girls and they start taking their clothes off, these boys' brains are going to release a chemical measurable in their bloodstream that's going to change how they feel, how they act, etc. Your brain is incredibly powerful. And when you're holding on, when you have that kind of trauma as children, it's going to come out emotionally and physically throughout your life. So you're exactly right on that. There are so many physical things that are attached to our emotions.
Yes, and the longer you keep them down, exactly, they just fester and it spreads. It spreads like a cancer.
Yep. Yep. Exactly. Exactly.
What are some of the healing modalities that you guys do use on your survivors that you've seen good success with?
So with the children, we have therapists, we have psychiatrists, we do a lot. The Child Liberation Foundation has a bunch of programs that are healing programs for the kids, which include art therapy, breath work, meditation. We do a lot of holistic healing tools with the kids that are very effective because of the fact that we know they went through some stuff and we can give them the help that they need. Now, for adults, especially ones who have dealt with trauma for a long time and they have 20 years worth of therapy aren't fixing their major problems. For adults, we have some incredibly powerful, effective tools. And I'm going to drop a bomb here with your audience. I'm in the late 60s. There were some laws passed which threw a whole bunch of things under the bus. So you and I, our entire life, if you're under 55 years old, our entire life, we've been completely shielded from these things. And we've been taught that they are as dangerous as cocaine. Okay. What I'm talking about is things like psilocybin. Okay. This is mushrooms. This is different types of psychedelics. Not only is psilocybin not as dangerous as cocaine, psilocybin is safer than table sugar. Right? There's never been a case of addiction. There's never been a case of overdose. Now, I am not a fan whatsoever of somebody going to a rave party and getting high with their friends. That is not what it's about. But when used with a trained facilitator, I have never found anything that is more effective in dealing with anxiety, depression, PTSD, anger issues, childhood trauma, and addictions, hardcore addictions. We've been able to help people with cocaine addictions, heroin addictions, pornography addictions, alcohol addictions, addictions to negative self-talk and worry and what if thinking and negative expectations, etc., are incredibly difficult to break. And when we're dealing with childhood trauma of any sort, then these tools are incredibly effective. Now, I'll explain it on a 30,000-foot view. I would encourage the listeners to look into it and do your own research. Don't just say, oh, yeah, this is a crazy drug. Exactly the opposite of what you think of when you think of a drug. A drug addictive, a drug bad for your body, a drug pulling you into a place of a low vibration energy, all of this stuff. These things shouldn't even be classified in the same way because we've seen them completely break people free of anxiety, depression, medication, drug and alcohol abuse, etc. So to explain it in a 2-minute form, when we were children, 1, 2, up to 7, 8 years old, our brains are in a state of what you would call neuroplasticity, right? Which means you're very, very impressionable. You can learn a lot of information very quickly because of that neuroplasticity. You can learn 3 languages at the same time that you're learning to ride your bike and learning how to walk and brush your teeth and all of this other stuff. Your brains are just soaking it in. But then that neuroplasticity goes away at about 8 or 9 years old, which is good because when you're a child and that neuroplasticity, if something happens, if your uncle touches you in a place he shouldn't, or if your father says, hey, you're fat, you're ugly, whatever, those things stick. They stick, and many times they get buried where we can't even remember them, right? Well, that neuroplasticity starts to go away so that when you're in third and fourth and fifth grade, now if some kid says, hey, you're fat, you're ugly, it's not going to stick. You're like, no, I'm not. You're right. It's not going to be because you don't have that impressionable mindset. Well, psilocybin creates a temporary state of neuroplasticity, right? Very, very impressionable. What that allows a facilitator to do is go back and help reframe some things that were literally frozen. Your subconscious mind dictates 95% of your day. Almost everything we do. You're driving a car. Your subconscious mind is telling you to take your foot off your gas and put it on the brake. You're not thinking through those things because new habits take at least 21 days to create a new habit. Habit meaning is simply is now in your subconscious mind and it's driving your life. Well, if we've got deep-seated traumas, if we've got addictions, if we got anger issues, we got anxiety, depression, we got childhood trauma, etc., it's stuck in that subconscious and it's driving most of our day. Now, the reason I bring this all up when it comes to the trafficking stuff is because the only way that we're going to fix this problem is we have to heal humanity. All of us, not just the guys who are hurting the kids, because all of us have an effect in some way. If you have anger issues, if you have verbal abuse or even physical abuse issues, these are all things that contribute to the negativity in our world and contribute to the things that are happening with our kids. And I can go through those later. So we all have to look in the mirror, say, how do I fix this? And so again, when you're in that state of neuroplasticity, this is why it is incredibly dangerous to go to a friend's house and do some mushrooms while they're having a big party, or you go to a rave party and do mushrooms with your friends. Because if you're in that state of neuroplasticity and now you've got orgy going on over here and a rap music going over here, and you've got somebody yelling at their wife over here, you're in this impressionable state that is incredibly unhealthy. However, if you come with a clear intention, you're working with trained facilitators, and you've identified the things that you want to release in your life, you can get 10 and 20 years worth of therapy done in 3 to 4 days. And
Wow.
so that's something that we've been trying to change some of the laws. RFK had said that he's going to come in and not only help fix some of the things with big pharma, he's committed that he's also going to decriminalize the proper use of psychedelics when it comes to trauma therapy and personal development and overcoming addictions, PTSD, etc. So that's the reason I bring that up, is because I believe that the legal landscape is going to change over the next few years. And it's incredibly important that good people know what works and what doesn't work so that we can use it effectively to help people release those things that don't serve them.
Oh my God. Could you imagine everyone like dealt with their shit? Like how different the world would be?
Absolutely.
Completely different world. The only problem is, and this is going to be hard for people to accept, there are people out there who don't want that.
They
That
don't.
want the chaos. That wants all of this horribleness. They actually want it. So to get it past these fuckers is gonna be a
Well,
task.
and there's trillions of dollars to be made by big pharma in keeping you sick.
Oh, of course.
You
I
know,
think they have the cure for cancer. If they want it.
absolutely they do. Absolutely. I've seen it. I've seen it using holistic therapy here in Latin America. We have one of our facilitators that has 3 different people who have used some of the tools that we use in terms of ayahuasca and bufo and combo to completely cure people of cancer in less than 4 months. Completely, right? There's a place called Unified Healing Centers that use frequency vibration. You can look up Dr. Royal Rife. Dr. Royal Rife in the early 1900s was able to cure cancer using frequency and vibration. Every single cell, every single molecule, every single atom has its own unique individual frequency and vibration. And just like when you have 2 crystal bowls, if they're resonating at the same resonance, one of them would crack, right? It's the same thing. He could actually take this resonance, and under a microscope, leukemia cells would respond to it. He turns it up and boom, 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 they're completely gone, not touching any of the other cells around it. So you can look into scalar wave technology, look into Dr. Royal Rife and the Rife machine, et cetera. You can go down that rabbit hole. You'll realize this stuff's been around for a long time. And unfortunately, there are the powers that be that say, you know what, we can make a lot more money in putting petroleum in our pharmaceuticals and patent them all. They do not want something like psilocybin to legalized in the US. Why? Because you can grow it in your backyard and save yourself 20 years worth of therapy and tens of thousands of dollars of drugs every other year, right? So, and they can't patent it. So why would they allow something for us to heal? I believe that Mother Earth has all of the tools for us to heal, but if they can't patent it, then they can't make billions of dollars off of us.
All right. Population control.
Oh, that too. I can go down that road. I've been in the rooms where they've talked about it.
It's so scary. Where can I get some of them seeds? I'm in first.
Well, the key, unfortunately, it's still illegal nationally in the U.S. It's been decriminalized in Colorado and Oregon, et cetera. I used to live in Utah, and I went into the attorney general and I said, brother, you know my background with my company I sold in my early 20s with anxiety and depression, et cetera. I said, I know this world. I have never seen anything more effective at helping people break free of childhood trauma or PTSD, all of these things. I said, I want to bring it to Utah. I don't want to get arrested. So can you help me make it legal? And so he laughed. And so we went down this road of, we started talking with some legislatures and stuff, and Utah became almost the first state to not only decriminalize, but it became almost the first state to fully legalize the use of psychedelics in trauma therapy. And then our governor decided he was going to veto our bill. His name is Governor Cox. I call him Governor Cox something else.
I think I know where you're.
But so we decided, you know what? I'm sorry, the Utah's not going to work. So we decided, hey, we're going to take it to Latin America. And that's what we're doing. I've now hosted and facilitated 67 guided meditation, plant medicine healing experiences. And you can go on to liberatinghumanity.com and learn all you need to know about keeping your kids safe and about the retreats and all of that stuff there.
Absolutely. My best friend, she did ayahuasca and she said it was eye-opening.
It was huge. Now, Aya is pretty heavy for your first experience. I'll say this. Ayahuasca is incredibly powerful for addicts. We have 2 doctors that have an 85% success rate in helping people with heroin and cocaine addictions completely break free using ayahuasca. But ayahuasca, you're sitting with a pail and you're throwing up like every 15 minutes all night, right? It's super, but it gets shit done. It's like, okay, that addiction to pornography, you're gonna release it. You're ready to release it. Yeah, you're gonna release it right now. Then it all comes up, right? So emotionally and physically, this process of breaking these cords that are incredibly ingrained. Now, the psilocybin, about 1 in every 20 people will throw up maybe once. It's not like all night type of a thing, but it's more of a dance. It's more of a, you're driving together with the facilitator in that state of neuroplasticity to create the life that you want, release the stuff that you want to release, and create the stuff that you're moving for. So we host 1 ayahuasca event per year. We host 12 psilocybin events per year. And we only do the IO for the people that have a really hard head or hard addictions and they need to get hit over the head to fix their shit. So
people who like Corona.
Yeah, exactly. Which is okay. Sometimes you need that. You got to purge. You got to hold that shit forever. Get rid of it.
Right. I mean, I never thought of that being a good way to get rid of trauma, but I mean, if it works.
It works really well. Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
like society, where do we go from here?
Well, I think society either needs to fix its shit or it's going to nosedive. But I believe in where we're going. I really do. I think we're going to see an elevation of global consciousness over the next 5 to 10 years like we've never imagined. I really do. I think most religions talk about a time of turmoil and then 1,000 years of peace. They kind of got that right. And I think we're close to it. Now, I don't think that God is going to come and wave his hand and all of a sudden we're all going to be nice to each other, right? We've got to figure that out. We've got to come to a place where we can fix our shit, say, no, That is not how we're going to treat each other anymore. We're not going to be dealing with that. Here's the thing. The same solution to fixing child trafficking is going to fix domestic abuse. It's going to fix the wars. It's going to fix all this. It's all of us coming to this realization that arrogance, ego, pride, lust, greed, anger, this stuff is not serving us. These divisions are not serving us. The very second that we look at another human being as anything less than the divine person they are, if I'm looking at a woman, a pornography situation, and I'm seeing her as an object, I'm playing in the exact same energy as these traffickers were, seeing these children as objects. Guys, I'm telling you, it's all related. We have to fix our shit. We have to release all of this toxicity. And I believe we're close to it. I believe we're there. I believe we're going to see a significant change in humanity as a whole as people get sick and tired of the bullshit, of the deceit, the lies from big pharma, from the government, from religions, all of them. We say, no, we can come together. We can connect with God. Personally, we don't have to go through all of this stuff, and we can release all of that crap that is causing us to do these horrible things to other human beings.
I've seen a huge shift within like the last 5 to 7 years, and I'm thankful for it. Even myself, like I had to take my own personal dive and look deep into myself and be like, well, why do I do some of the things I do? And of course, it always should. Always comes back to childhood. And you really need to get to children, obviously, when they're children.
Exactly.
Like let's start the healing before it can get out of control. We should be
Exactly.
teaching this shit in schools.
Yeah,
Not
really.
things
Yeah,
that
we have mental health programs that we are getting mandated in the school systems here in Latin America that I believe within the next couple of years. And I think that's more important than half the crap that we're being taught in schools right now, is mental health as a whole and releasing all of this trauma, because we don't teach it. We don't teach these things in school, and people hold on to this crap for years and years and years. And it comes out in generational transfer of that trauma.
Yep, I am a product of that, and I said it ends to me. I'm not doing this anymore.
Super proud of you.
It ain't serving nobody. Nobody got no time for that.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, it's a no-brainer, but for some reason, it's just such a fight to do the right thing.
I think there's enough of us who are sick of the crap that the tide is changing. And, it's a lot of the things that have been hidden for many, many years are going to come to light. I mean, just today, they decided to make public some of the JFK stuff, and hopefully the Epstein list will be coming out. I mean, stop hiding the crap. Let's bring it all out. Let's have full disclosure. If people need to go to jail, go to jail. We're all adults here. Let's figure this out.
I want to see that list, but I just wonder if higher peaks are going to hide some of the names on there.
Yeah, my camera went out. That's right. I have my other. I'm not as pretty on this camera as I am the other one. Hold on. That's my computer one. I have my lights. I'm going to turn off that light. I think I'll be prettier without that behind me.
Gorgeous.
That Epstein list, part of me thinks, will that ever be released in its fullness? And here's the thing to understand. Let's put it this way. If you are an agency, whether that's a 3-letter one or one that we've ever heard about, if you're an agency that wants to control the votes of a congressman, of a senator, of a federal judge, of a billionaire, you want to control them forever, you get them on film, on a jet, on an island with a 12-year-old, you control them forever, right? And sadly, that control is way more valuable to them than just putting you in jail. If you're a senator, if you're a billionaire, if you've got that kind of crap on somebody like Bill Gates, if you've got that on him, then you don't want him to go to jail. You'd rather keep him as a puppet.
Yeah, you want that money, honey.
Yeah, you do. You want to keep the votes going the right way. You want to put the money in the right places. That's what it's all about. Sadly, even the P. Diddy thing, the feds going in and picking up all those tapes, it wasn't about who can I put in jail next. It's about who do I have blackmail on now so that I can control them. That's what it's all about. And sadly, the children are the ones that are taking the heat on being abused in these situations so that this blackmail and control can happen.
They're being abused in the court system. I mean, there's no justice for these kids. Like all the girls that came forward for Epstein,
Yeah.
like, where's the justice for the survivors?
Yeah.
What in the actual fuck are we doing?
Yeah. Absolutely. It's a broken system all the way to the top. I don't know what it's going to take to fix it, but I think enough people are waking up. And especially because there's people like you. There's a people that are not being controlled by the system who are bringing truth to the world. And that's what needs to happen.
Oh yeah, that's all I'm bringing is the truth.
Exactly.
I'm scared.
Hey.
Well, is there anything else that you wanted to add?
Well, I'm just super grateful to share with the group. I will say this, if you haven't seen Sound of Freedom, go watch it. It's on Amazon. It'll take a box of tissues, but it'll change your life. However, if you want the deeper story, you can go to soundoffreedombook.com, or that'll take you right into Liberating Humanity right there. And you can pre-order the Sound of Freedom book. It's coming out in bookstores in July and on Amazon and everywhere else. And unlike the movie where you learn all about it, but you don't have a call to action, you don't have any things that you can actually do as a parent, the book is filled with real rescues, real information that you can take and keep your kids safer at home. From a charity standpoint, I think it's going to really help open your hearts. And the full last section, the last 6 chapters are all about liberating humanity, all about what is it going to take to heal humanity and fix this problem for good. And so I think you'll really, really enjoy the Sound of Freedom book. And you can wait till July and it'll be available on Amazon. But if you want to pre-order it at a discount, then you can do so and just get on the waiting list right there on liberatinghumanity.com or soundoffreedombook.com will take you right in as well.
I'm going to make sure I add the links in the show notes because what you're doing is phenomenal. And I really appreciate all the work that you did. You put your life on the line to save lives of others, especially children. And a lot of people think they're big and bad. You walk the walk, you talk the talk. And so I have to thank you with the bottom of my heart because you are actually trying to change the world. And that's what we need more of.
Thank you. I'm super, super grateful. Grateful for the opportunity. We didn't even get into a lot of it, but the me I was 10 years ago, 11 years ago was very different than today. I lived a life of opulence. I had a massive house, 2 helicopters, a basketball court in my basement, just off the charts. And doing this work, not only the child rescue work, but when I was brought into the personal healing side, completely changed everything. And changed how I was showing up in my relationships, showing up in my family, showing up for the world, and recognize that buying another supercar was never going to make me happy. In fact, it was interesting when I got that very first phone call asking me to come undercover on a mission. And my business partner called me. I'm a co-founder of a multi-billion-dollar investment fund. And at the time we had 4,000 employees and we were doing really, really well. And my business partner called me and he said, Paul, he said, you're doing what? You're going to Colombia to go rescue children? He says, have you thought through this? Have you thought this through? He says, this is really dangerous. He said, you're set. You could sell out today. You could buy an island. You could be happy the rest of your life. And I said, John, would I really be happy if I bought an island, if I bought another plane, if I bought another helicopter? I says, would that make me happy? I said, if I was doing something else dangerous tomorrow, if I was climbing Everest, you and I would have the same conversation. He goes, yeah, we probably would. I said, and when I'm 95 years old and I'm looking back on my life and I say, oh, okay, I climbed this mountain. I built this multi-billion-dollar company. I helped rescue this many children from slavery. Which of them matters at all? He said, yeah, you're right, Paul. He said, if you have the skill sets and background to help with that, you need to go. And that changed everything. That one decision right there changed everything.
Money cannot buy love, freedom. Money cannot buy.
None of that. So, and if people want to get involved with the foundation, you can go to childliberation.org. Childliberation.org. You can learn all about the things that we're doing with the certification programs, helping to change laws and policies, the rescue missions, all of that, the safe houses, the healing of the kids, all of that. You can be a part of it. Donate $20 a month. Make a difference in the life of a child. And donate $100 a month and watch the karma, watch the universe open up the windows of heaven and pour out blessings in your life for contributing and helping in a meaningful way and affecting the lives of other people.
Absolutely. That's what it takes. We all got to come together.
That's right. That's right. Thank you, Tiffany. I'm super grateful for the time spent with you, with your audience. And thanks for allowing me to talk about even the healing side. I know that's a touchy issue for some people. From a religious standpoint, I don't go down that way. It shouldn't be that at all. It's because you're classifying them in the same place as hardcore drugs. It should not be classified there at all. It's exactly the opposite, safer than table sugar, incredibly healing when used correctly with trained facilitators. So I'd encourage you to do some research. If you're a listener on this, look up the Johns Hopkins University studies, and 76% of the people who do one single dose, a ceremonial dose with psilocybin, 76% said it was the number one most impactful day of their life. Now, I'm telling you, you need to do it with a trained facilitator, but incredibly positively impactful. So thank you for letting me share, and go see the movie, read the book, and follow me on Liberating Humanity anywhere on Instagram, on Facebook. Anything is all just Liberating Humanity.
Yes. And if you know anyone who needs this episode, make sure you share it with them. We need to spread the word. Look at how we do it, how we change the world.
Exactly. And if you know anybody that's like Tiffany that has a big audience with a good heart, I would love to share with more people. So feel free to reach out to Tiffany, and she has my number.
I sure do. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.